Hi guys, welcome in that series of video about the new feature of Golem 6. I'm running Golem 6.1 because you can run any Golem 6 version, you should get exactly the same result here. So this is where we should ended up with today, with just a traffic simulation here. So we got a couple of characters around, we got characters stopped at the traffic light here, and as soon as those guys will get a red light here, you should get those characters now passing by. And you may have noticed I've got that crazy character over there. That's mainly because I wanted to make that demo, the tutorial a bit funnier. So I added like an explosion. So if I run here, if I run the cache, maybe I'm gonna remove the light so I can get interactive play rate. Yeah, I get an explosion. Some characters, when they explode, they lose their tires, and when that explosion occurs, we got plenty of other characters which start fleeing from that scene. So spinning up, you can see here, you may have noticed that that guy here in the background, he had those wrecked car in the middle of the road, and it just hit them and pushed them away and pushed the tires as well. So if I wanted this to be more accurate, I should also add a couple of dynamic behaviors on that guy because it just get away with just hitting a car without any damage or without any dynamic response. So if I wanted to be more accurate, I should add more more dynamic behaviors. But I decided to stay just like this, which is actually a good start. You can see that guy is getting pushed by. That's actually funny. You get that guy here who's getting pushed by the other. And the one final thing here, rewind way is pretty good as well. Yeah, one thing to notice is in that tutorial we're not covering wheel steering, so you will not see wheels moving, not even for linear translation or turning, so it just stay the same the whole duration of the sim. That will be covered in another tutorial. We'll just stay with traffic and the physics for now. The characters also collide with the buildings. I'm not sure if that's noticeable here. Not really, but if they were just projected against the building, they will be reacting against the building as well. So yeah, this is where we should end up with today. And to start this clean, I'm gonna open another scene here, which will just hold a couple of curves. So this is how my start scene looks like. It's just a couple of Bezier curve, but notice that you can use any Maya curve. And those Bezier curve here are just representing pieces of road. So notice that for now, Golem is not able to detect intersections between curves, so I had to make sure that I draw every piece of road as a separate curve. But when this in mind, when you're done, you can just select that bunch of curves here, go into the Golem menu, into the environment locator, which where you install all the locators for the different context of Golem. So there's one locator for navigation, one for physics sim, one for flocking, and one for traffic. So with the curve selected, I can jump into creating a traffic locator. So that creates a new group here, which is called GLM environments. And within that GLM environments, I'm ending up with that traffic node. That traffic node is in charge of handling the display of the lane here, as well as the directions, and is also the environment which will be used by the car later in my sim. So let's take a look at that guy. That guy holds all the curves here. You can check which side the people are gonna drive. So it's gonna be on the right side or on the left side, and that switched the direction. Do you want to enable lane switch? So let's say you got separate lanes here. Do you enable characters to switch lanes? If yes, how long does it take? This is going to be the default road attributes. So if we take a look at what that means is here on every basic curve which have been attached to the crossing locator, if I go to the extra attributes, I'm ended up with 5 new attributes which have been created by Golem as soon as they've been attached to the environment traffic locator. So this is the weight of the lane, so how big this is, what's the size between those two lanes here, how many lanes I'm having in one side, or how many lanes I'm having on the other side, and the sample count is um, how many samples I'm going to use to turn. So if I just have two, that means that my characters will just turn in one step, so they're going to be following that axis here, and then in one step follow that axis. So I would like to smooth that a bit. You may see that they are connected to something, and that something is actually my traffic locator default road attribute. So every single curve here is connected to the locator, which means if I change the number of lanes forward and the number of lanes backward, every single curve get affected. I'm going to also change the sample curve. I want to have some smoother turn here, and also like reduce the separation between the lines. I'm pretty happy with the weight of the line, but if you want to do, smaller roads or bigger roads, this is the way you can handle this. So let's go back to default value. When I'm done with this, well, you can actually even like customize for a single curve. So you can say, okay, that road here, I want to change the inner separation. So I can break that connection here and maybe change this, and I get, I get separation between the lines. So yeah, let's say something like this here. Pretty happy with that. Then I need to compute the crossings, because here all the lines are like on top of each other, so I don't have any crossing anticipation or reaction. So I want to auto compute crossings, and every single time Golem will figure out there's going to be an intersection between some curves, it will create a crossing node. The crossing node are going to be stored below the traffic locator. So I'm having all my different crossings, and within that crossings I can specify what's going to be the radius of that crossing. So I want to make sure that it's the most accurate possible here. I want to also specify, is it a junction or is it a traffic light, or crossing. So if I select it's a junction, it means that those lights here will be green for the whole duration of the simulation, and what's going to happen is just people will let the priority on the right to characters if I want to turn, and there'll not be like any traffic light. If I uncheck this, I will have a traffic light. So I'll go to this a bit later. So I want to make sure that at least every corner here is not going to be a junction, and I want to make sure it has the correct size. Here on the outer road, I don't want to have any junction. I just want to have a couple of priorities going on, so I'm gonna reduce this a bit as well, and do that for all of them. Not a junction. Not a junction. I could write a script to do this for me, but well, there's just 8 of them, so I can get away with that pretty easily. Not a junction, and here, not a junction. Okay, let's just want that guy here, which I wanted him to be a junction, and I'm pretty happy with the size like this, which means that now that guy is not a junction, means it's a light, it's going to be a traffic light. And regarding the traffic lights, I've got 2 options. I can say, okay, it's either an automatic light system, and here that means that the light will be green for 8 seconds, orange for 3 seconds, and red for 3 seconds, and that will cycle amongst the different lines. So those lines here may be green for 8 seconds, and when they turn red, there's going to be those lines there which will turn green. If I'm not happy with automatic light, I can use manual lighting, and here for every single curve I'm having, I can keyframe those attributes, so I can control that with an expression or keyframe that with some curves. And as the tooltip says, if you put a value of 0 for your keyframe, that means the traffic light will be red. If you put 1, means the traffic light will be green, and whatever which is in between will be orange. So I'm quite happy with the automatic lighting system. And finally, what you're having here is output light timing. So that provides you the value. So same system, 0 for red, 1 for green, whatever for orange. And that gives you some output here of what's the current color of the simulation. So let's say I run the sim here. You can see here that guy is red. So it says that those 2 curves are 1. I'm going to run the sim for a couple of frames. So should switch now. So now it's 0.5 and turn green for the other lines here after 3 seconds, and now those are set to 1. So those output value can be used to drive whatever shaders you want to. So let's say you want to have a shader which will be controlled by Golaem in terms of displaying the red light, the orange light, or the green light. You can connect your shader to those output from the sim, and that will animate your shader correctly if you want to. So okay, that's pretty nice. I'm quite happy with this. Everything is green on the surroundings, except in the middle where I'm having my traffic lights. So I'm happy with my environment here. So next step will consist in creating my entity type. So I want to add a new type of character in my scene, which will be a car. So I'm gonna load within my Golem character pack. I'm going to Golem pack, Golem directory characters, and select that brand new character we provide, which is called casual car. So I'm gonna bring it, and it's asking me, do I want to bring the shaders? So sure, I'd like to. I'm gonna go into the same dir Golem here, go into shaders. I'm gonna use Arnold here for rendering, so I'm gonna select casual car Arnold, and that's gonna load in the middle of my scene, my shader. I'm not sure why the texture is broken, but whatever. Next, what I'd like to do is, well, at least I did this. So I'm gonna go into casual car and remove that for a bit. Go into my entity type and figure out if I need to change whatever. So scale, sure, I don't want to have different scale of character here, so I'll put everything to 1. Regarding rendering type, right now it's going to be regular cars all the way, so I'm going to deal with this for now. Next, I'd like to populate my scene, so I'm going to use the pop tool there. I'm going to put my grid there. I'm going to make it like a 10 by 10 square grid and add my characters. So clearly they're not big enough, so let's bring back the car. Okay, so I would like to maybe first make sure that I'm having the correct radius on my car. So I'm going to change the radius to, I guess, 1.5, which is maybe way too big, 1.3. Okay, sounds good enough, right? Meshes here, deformation system reference. I'm just going to line up car. Yeah, okay, sounds good. Then I'd like to change the distance. So you may want, actually, when you do that kind of stuff, I guess you may want to generate your characters on the lines, but what's going on is here, if you don't want to bother generating characters specifically on lines, you can generate characters wherever you like to, and as soon as you're going to drop traffic behavior within those characters, they will be snapped on the closest curve. So that may end up in a collision between cars, so you may have to run the sim for a couple of frames the time the characters get away to each other, but that's a good way to just generate the characters without having to bother about placing them exactly where you'd like them to be. So I'm going to change maybe the distance between my characters. I want to distribute them like really evenly. I want some of them to be on the exterior, so if I want some of them to be on the exterior, I need to make sure that some of the slots are close to those here instead of close to those ones. So maybe something like 13 or even a bit more, 14. And I'm gonna use a bit orientation noise as well, and well, I'm gonna be good with this. When I'm happy with that, I just press create. That creates a new particle system, and now as soon as I'm gonna run the sim, I'm ended up with my characters. So this is my regular car characters. Maybe I would like to make something more like an American city, so I'm gonna bring up some couple of CADs here. So I created 2 types of car within that casual car characters. There's regular car and taxi. So I'm gonna bring some taxi in, specify what's gonna be the weighting, and next time I'm gonna throw the sim. Now I'm having my yellow taxi in the scene, so which is pretty good. So my characters are just, for now, I just spawned where I populate them. So they're not really following the lines. That's because I need to provide a couple of behaviors here. So to provide behaviors, I need to jump into the behavior editor and select my car type, which is empty right now. And this is where we're going to be introduced to those 2 new behaviors. So there's 2 behaviors here, one which is called traffic behavior. that guy will follow the traffic rules. So you're going to apply traffic rules to the characters. They'll follow the traffic locator. They've been specified. So the rules are going to be, what's the speed of my characters? What's the speed when they go straight? What's the speed when they go turning? What's the maximum acceleration and deceleration for my characters? And some randomization for the speed here. So if I just drop it there and run the sim, now I'm having my characters which get spawned to the closest curve they had, and they start running. So we can quickly check what's going on. Here the traffic lights is green, so it goes green. The characters just follow whatever path we've been picking, and I can check what's going on. I'm not really happy with the density here. Yeah, I can clearly see here that the space between my characters is way too big. I suspect that the bounding box for my car is not good enough. So one way to check this is to select the car, go into the Maya viewport settings here, into the visual feedback, and go into the traffic attribute. So I can select my car box, and I can see it's way too big for my characters. So if I'm not really happy with that, I can just go into my entity type node, go into the entity type attributes, and I've got a panel which is called traffic attribute I'm going to open, and that guy stores what's the ratio. So here we define a radius for the slots. So what's the radius to length ratio? So remember the radius I put here was 1.3. So here it's 6 times 1.3, which is apparently way too big. So I'm going to provide a value of 4. The radius to white ratio is pretty okay. So if I run the sim again, select that guy here, that's way better. If I'm not happy with, by the way, with by default the box will be centered. If I'm not happy with that, I can just change the percent of centering. So as I said, on the first frames, the character might be in collision with each other when they get spawned to the closest curve. So what you just have to do is just run the sim for a couple of frames, and you'll get rid of all those collisions. Okay, that's a bit better. Now they are actually a bit close. They're colliding with each other, so I'm gonna just increase that value to 4.5, and I should get something which is better. So, okay, that's not bad. I've got some, traffic feeling here. I can see it's crawling of cars. They're turning, they're following the different curves. So that's good enough for me. Let me check. I can see that the turns are a bit rough. So let me check if I change the sampling. So maybe let's increase this a bit. So I'll get a smoother sampling here for the curves. Okay, not bad. So next step here will be that I'd like my characters to explode in some situations. So I'm gonna just hide my pop tool because I don't need it anymore. And I'd like to say that at frame, I don't know, so let's run this sim for a couple of frames, see what's going on. I would like to say that at frame maybe 102, I would like a zone of my environment to explode. So what about those guys here? So to do some explosion, oh yeah, by the way, I just forgot to color the other behavior we're having for traffic. Sorry, there's one to so specify traffic rules, and there's one to send people somewhere. So by default, entities cars, they just they just hang around, and they don't have any specific target. So if you want to change this, you want to assign the target to some or to all the cars, you can just choose the go to traffic here, and that guy just takes a locator. So you just put the locator somewhere on the line. We may play with that a bit later. So you just put a locator here, anywhere on any on the lane, and just assign that behavior, and you'll have all the characters which will which will pass a road to go from their position to the target position. But once again, we may play with that a bit later. So, okay, let's go back to my explosion now. I would like my characters to explode, so I'm going to use the physics sim behaviors there. So I'm going to start choosing the physicalized behavior. So that guy will turn the character as something. So this something will be a dynamic rigid body. So in case of cars, dynamic rigid body is exactly what I like to do if you're using characters such as humans or anything which is organic or animals. Dynamic rigid body will just turn the character into ragdolls, which is not what you'd like to. And here you may want to play with the other modes, but in case of car, that's exactly what I like to do. So I want to trigger that behavior, that physics behavior, as soon as something happens. So something happens means I'm going to play with triggers. So when does that traffic behavior stops? It's going to stop when my character will be in that zone over there and at a specific frame. So I'm going to check the stopping trigger. So I'm going to double click here. That's going to open my trigger editor. And what I'd like to do is say, okay, I want my characters to check if they're in the zone and if the current frame is something. So notice the word I used between my two triggers. I used the word end. I want my characters to be in the zone and be at one current frame. So what I'd like to use is the AND operator. So I want to check those two conditions at the same time, and I want to enable this. So I want to set that properly. So what's my frame? Frame will be frame 100. So when my frame is 100 and my characters are within the zone, so I'm going to configure the zone. So I need to create maybe a polygon here. Let's use like a plain polygon. Scale this a bit. Put that down here. Maybe change it so that's going to include those guys over there as well. Okay, not bad. So I'm selecting my zone here, pressing shift, clicking that trigger. That keeps the selection within the Maya viewport. I can press map. Here it's going to be a 2D zone because that's a 2D surface, it's just a plane, and I'm happy with this. So that means now that my characters will traffic, and some of them at frame 100, which will be in the zone, will just make a transition to that physicalized behavior. So if we play the sim, so nothing really specific should happen. I've got my characters being stopped and the others crossing them. So what's happening here is that so they're not taking into account anymore in the behavior. I stop the behavior. I stop the traffic behavior for those guys, so they're not existing anymore in the behavior, nor they're colliding with the others because the others are not part of the physics world. So what I would like to do is maybe make those other guys part of the physics world. So here I want them to be part of the physics world, but I want them to be controlled by the traffic system. So what I'd like to do is when the simulation starts, I want to add those guys into the physics world. So I'm going to drag another physicalized behavior here. In here, I'm going to change the mode. So the mode I want to is not dynamic. I don't want those characters to be dynamic. Else, if I play the sim, I will just have like rigid body simulation and nothing happening. So what I want is them to be kinematic. So kinematic means that the position, the posture will be driven by the rest of the simulation, but still that will exist into the physics world. I want this to be, this behavior changes the status for the characters. So what I'd like to do is I just want to change this stopping trigger, say that's going to happen right when the simulation starts. And by the way, I just figured out that I forgot to specify the same thing here. So, okay, what's going to happen is here, simulation is going to start. I'm going to switch all my characters to kinematic at the first frame. Then they're going to do traffic until frame 100 happens and characters will be in the zone. So the characters will be in the zones will switch to physicalized behavior and they will change status here, being turned into kinematic, dynamic rigid body objects because I set up the stopping trigger of that behavior to false. And the other characters should be and should go in collision with those guys. So, okay, now they're being pushed and we got a couple of collisions going on. So if I can check, one way to debug this, by the way, is I can actually click on the guy here. I can check within the behaviors what's going on. Let's close that part. Okay, so run the sim. I will have frame 100 happening here in a couple of frames. So as soon as frame 100 happens and my characters will be in the zone, it stops the traffic behavior, go into the physics, and the physics just run for one frame, and now my character is turned into a rigid body object. And that guy here, if I check that guy, is still playing the traffic behavior here because he hasn't met that condition. So current frame equals 100, and in the zone is something which is not true, was not true for that character. So it just hit the other cars and collide with them and play his own life. It's actually pretty cool. I've got characters, interacting with each other and being hit by other cars. So that's pretty okay. But still, what I said earlier is that I wanted them to explode. So I'm gonna add an explosion so for those characters who have been turned into a rigid body object, I'm gonna add another behavior here, which will be a force behavior. So that force behavior takes a direction and a magnitude. So what's going to be the size of the force and what's going to be the direction of the force. So I want to use like a locator here. So I'm going to create like a locator, and that guy will drive the direction. So I'm going to put it there, maybe put it a bit under so the force comes from under. And I'm going to connect it to my force behavior here. So still select the locator within the scene, hold shift, select the force behavior so the selection is kept, and press map. So now the direction is going to be driven by the position of the locator, and I'm going to press map for the magnitude as well. So the magnitude will depend on the distance with the locator. So minimum distance will be 0, maximum distance will be up to me to define this. I'm going to try to set it the same radius than the zone there. So the magnitude at the minimum distance, so the closer I am to the center of the locator, which force I'm going to get, and the most distance from the locator I'm going to be, what's going to be the magnitude at that distance. So I'm going to put something like maybe not too much here, 10, and maybe 50 when I'm going to be next to the locator. So let's run the sim, see what's going on here. So I'm going to have my characters as soon as they're in the zone from 100, they get assigned a magnitude. Okay, that's not really convenient. Okay, my car is a rigid body object. It's pretty heavy. It's a car, so that kind of force, doesn't make much difference. And also the force is the same applied on all the rigid body objects. So that's why the car is moving in a specific, in a linear way. So maybe what I'd like to do is just apply the force, the impulse, on one specific point on the car. So that means that I will have something which will introduce more turbulence into the force. So what do I have? I could hit the car in the front or in the rear. So I'm going to say I'm going to hit the car in the front. I'm going to remove all the other bones there. So what I just want to do is hit the car in the front. And I may have to provide a way higher value just to make sure that I get something. Yeah, as I suspected, I need to provide like a way more higher value. So let's say something like 1,000 magnitude at minimum distance. Okay, so now I've got that twist I wanted to, but still that's not big enough. I'm going to put 2,000 there. Should be good. Yep, that's way better than, yeah, that's way better than what I wanted. Okay, cool, excellent. So I can unselect my force behavior, so it's not displayed anymore in the viewport. I wanted to have collisions with my buildings. Here, my characters are just hanging around on them to collide with my buildings. And I want my characters to flee as soon as there is an explosion. So maybe the two last steps will be create like a building. So I'm just gonna hang it with a cube, will be like way good enough here. I'm gonna change the white of my cube so it fits the road, change the height as well, something like this, and the depth would be something like that. So move the position here, there, okay, and maybe duplicate that guy so I can put it here. I want them to be colliders for the simulation, so I'm gonna select those two meshes here, go into Golem, select the crowd rigid body node object. They're not being detected the same way, so I'm gonna go into those guys here. So it detected that here should be approximated as a triangle mesh. I want it to be approximated as a convex hull, so it's more efficient in terms of collision, and that guy has been detected as a box, which is good, or I can go into convex hull, which will produce the exact same result. Which means now when I'm going to run the sim, I'll get my characters when they're going to explode. If at some point they hit the buildings, they're going to bounce back on it and collide with it. So, okay, that's not bad. What about detaching stuff? So here, one other behavior we may want to play with is the detach behavior. So I'm gonna just drag and drop that detach behavior next to the force. So I'm gonna apply force and a detach. So the detach behavior is pretty straightforward. Once again, it's just take a name of a bone and detach it and make sure it's gonna be running the physics. So I can have as many bones as I want to. So I can say, okay, I'm gonna select all the tires here and apply, and that means that if I run the sim, I should get my characters losing all the tires as soon as they are gonna be hit. They're not. Let me check what's going on. So once again, one way to debug what's going on is select the guy. So yeah, okay, totally. They're still stuck into that force behavior. So that force behavior is just applying an impulse. So if we go into that force behavior, it's just applying an impulse. So I can actually, I need to stop that guy when I feel it's going to be the correct timing, and apply a detach. So I need to change the stop trigger here. Say, okay, stop trigger here, it's false by default. So I just need that guy to be played for one frame. So it's applying the impulse, and then next I can go into the detach. I'm pretty sure that's not going to be good enough. The car will lose their tires as soon as the sim's going to start, so that I'm pretty sure that's not what I want to do. So let's check. So run the sim, play. Yeah, as I suspected. I've got the tires here, but yeah, the characters have not jumped the way they should have. So maybe what I should do is, and apparently also the car hadn't had the time to get its impulse. So okay, I may do it like differently. So let's go back to false here, and what I would do is at the same time I'm going to apply a force and detach the tires bone. I may want also to have like a delay between the time the force get applied and detached and applied, so I'm going to bring like a block behavior here, put it just in front of the detach, so when this is going to start, the detach will be delayed a bit by what I'm going to provide in the block. So I'm going to provide like a delay between 20 and 30 frames. So let's take a look. My character is being physicalized, so they're in collision with everybody. Then traffic, the traffic stops when characters get in the zone at frame 100. They get applied a force, then that force, they get applied a rigid body simulation and the force. At the same time of the force, we're going to detach bone after only a couple of frames. And let's run the sim again. This should be pretty what I'm looking for at frame 100. Yes, that's better. So you may have noticed the characters lost their tires, and now those tires are actually interacting with the rest of the sim here. By the way, that's turn here is not smooth enough for me. I can see these characters turning in a non-natural way. So what I may want to do is actually increase the size of the crossing here, because they can't really cross and turn properly. So go back into the environment and figure out that's that one there, and maybe change the size of that guy, something like 13. Okay, and run the sim again. Okay, and okay, physics sim here, losing tires, collision with the other cars. Okay, and you know what, I want them to flee the other characters as soon as they get hit. as soon as there's an explosion, I don't want everybody to just, you know, do whatever they used to do before. So I want to introduce a condition. So it means that if my character are in the zone, I'm gonna do this graph here, else I'm gonna do just a change within the traffic behavior. So I'm gonna say if here, bring another traffic behavior there, and I'm gonna set up my conditions. So go into the if behavior. So if some trigger go into the traffic, else go into that branch of the graph. You know what? I'm gonna change the way it's gonna be done. I'm gonna say here, no behavior for now. I want the default condition to go for so what's the name of that behavior? Traffic 2. So, and the name here is physicalize 1 or physicalize 2. Physicalize 1. Yeah, okay. So default condition here, else I want to go to traffic 2. Okay, so means that now the condition I'm having here is going to be, oh, I can see it. Let's draw it myself. Okay, so now I'm having a condition. So what I can do is say, okay, I want that traffic stuff to stop. I want it to stop when frame 100. So frame 100 is actually going to be my trigger event here. So I'm going to select this, set it as root. So now my characters at frame 100, they'll stop doing traffic. Then they'll go into the if. So what I want to do here is check if am I in the zone. So if I am in the zone, I'm going to play all the physics, explosion, losing my tire stuff. So I can just either kill this guy here and bring it back there. So open my behavior editor, open this back, go into triggers. Now I'm having my trigger polygon zone. So if I select that one there, I can bring that guy there, set it as root. So it's just looking for a zone. So going traffic, if I'm in the from 100, make a choice. If I'm in the zone, do physics, tire explosion, and so on. Else, do traffic. So do traffic with different parameters. So I'm gonna increase the speed of my characters, so they're gonna like move faster. There's an explosion in a sim, in an environment, everybody got crazy and they go way faster than they used to. So I'm gonna change the parameters, like provide them a higher speed, higher turning speed, higher acceleration, and I want them to go somewhere. I don't want them to still hang around in that zone here, so I want them to flee. So I can use my traffic go to behavior here. That's going to be handy there. So I'm going to drag and drop in it at the same position here. And I want to provide the locator position. Let's say I want them to be all of them at the opposite of the sim. So I'm going to put a locator like right here. Oops. But going to maybe top view camera. Figure out where is that guy here. So my explosion is in that area, so I want to put my locator lost it. I want to put my locator in a convenient position, like at the opposite of the sim. So select the locator, press shift, press map, and now it's mapped. Go into perspective view and run the sim, see what's going on. So at frame 100, characters will make a choice, either explode or flee. So you can see now my characters, the speed of my characters has really went wild. They still follow the traffic light there, but they're getting way faster and trying to get away from that explosion simulation. So whenever you're happy with this, I'm going to bring this into until rendering. So whenever you're happy with this, you can just export the sim here. So it's gonna run the sim for me, export this as a cache, and you'll just be able to go into Arnold and do your rendering, or go into layout and actually edit a couple of stuff and remove a couple of characters you're not really happy with. Oops. Okay. So now I can scrabble into the timeline, see what's going on, fix stuff. So let's say I I don't know, let's say I'm not happy with that guy here. I can press F9. Oops, that guy there. I can press F9, go into the simulation layer and just remove it, and that's going to be removing the characters and his tires, which have been detached. So that's just just a good way to check out and fix what's going on. So that's all for that tutorial. Hope that was helpful, and see you in the next video.